Okay, right. We'll make a start. We've still got people filing in, but I'm very keen to crack on because today's session is hella exciting because we've got lots of filmmakers with lots of questions. So welcome everyone to the third session in our Filmmaker Lounge Digital Bootcamp. I'm Katie Bignell and I'll be your host today. If you're a regular viewer, then welcome back. It's lovely to see you again. And if you're a first-time viewer, then let me catch you up. So this is a space that Festival Formula and Film Festival Alliance created for us all to chat about areas of the industry that filmmakers want to know about on their festival circuit journey. This is the penultimate session of a series of 4. And today we have some brilliant guests to discuss hospitality and networking. It's an area that we're all keen for filmmakers and festivals to know more about and to engage with. So our guests are going to briefly introduce themselves and which festivals they are representing. So Olena, if you could go first, and then Arietta, and then we'll finish off with you, Dan.
Hi, sure. My name's Olena Decock. I'm an industry programmer at HotDocs International, Canadian International Documentary Film Festival, which takes place every end of April, beginning of May in Toronto or Takaranto, the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, and the Chippewa and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. And that's actually where I'm calling in from. My pronouns are she, her, or elle in French. And I am a white woman with chestnut hair, wearing a blue polka dot top, and I'm against a white background.
Fantastic, thank you. Arietta.
Hello, my name is Arietta Austin, and I am with the Tallgrass Film Festival. I'm the hospitality director, and we are located in Wichita, Kansas, smack dab in the middle of the United States. My pronouns are her, she, me.
Fantastic, and Dan.
Hi, I'm Dan Brawley. I'm the Chief Instigating Officer at Cucalorus, and I'm sitting in my office. Behind me, over this shoulder, there's a really tiny Cucalorus right there. And I am in Wilmington, North Carolina, the unceded land of the Cape Fear Siouans, whose relatives are still in North Carolina, the Lumbee tribe and the Waccamaw Siouans. And Cucalorus Film Festival happens every year in November. This year will be our 27th annual film festival. And really excited to be here and chat with you all.
Fantastic, thank you so much. For those watching live, please do feel free to pop any questions in the Q&A button at the bottom, or if you're on Facebook, pop it in the comments and we'll get them shifted over here. We do, like I said earlier, we do encourage folks to say where they're tuning in from, because it's always nice to see where you're watching. I've got some questions from folks that have signed up for this webinar, as well as some that we get asked a lot, but also any questions that anyone has, please pop them in and we can ask them. So let's get chatting. And I thought this would be an interesting one just to kick it off. It's nice and gentle, but first off, why do you think these two areas go hand in hand? It's always hospitality and networking. And I'm wondering, why do you reckon that is? Does anyone want to jump in? I'm going to pick on you, Dan, because you said I could pick on you.
I think in order for those things that we call networking to happen, you have to have good hospitality, right? And so, if you go to an event and there are 800 people, you're going to have a certain kind of experience, but you're not going to get to know anybody really well because there's so many people in the room. And so for us, it's important to create those moments where there are a smaller group of people, they can actually talk and get to know each other. Because you can print 1,000 business cards and give them to everybody that you meet at a festival, but unless you really talk to somebody and get to know them a little bit, find out what you have in common, then it's unlikely that you're going to make a meaningful connection over a long period of time. So at Cucalorus, that's really important to us, to create those small, intimate moments. And those often need to be curated, right? And that's what hospitality really sets the stage, I think, for making friendships. networking sort of sounds really corporate. I think for us, we're hopeful at least that when you come to our festival that you're going to make some friends that'll be valuable, both, you know, as friends doing things together, but also maybe in your creative career.
Definitely, definitely. And Arietta, as the kind of hospitality kind of chief role, do you find that you're always kind of spilling into the networking element, or is it, you know, in tandem? Do you discuss that as a team?
We pretty much discuss it as a team, but as you say, they do go hand in hand. And we like to set up, you know, roundtable talks so they have a chance to get to know each other and what each other is doing. I actually host a private hospitality suite that's for the filmmakers only. That way they get to network. They have a place that's just for them. So yeah, I love watching all the network that happens. Even we'll throw them on a bus and take them to visit the tour, you know, tour the city and see where they could actually come back and, you know, do some films. And they have a lot of fun on that bus, let me tell you.
I will say it's when you get a festival that really does pull out the stops, and it doesn't have to be anything like massive, but just a gesture. Like when we've, as a industry guest at festivals, when we've been taken on like a day trip, or taken to a local kind of cultural temple when we were in China, or, you know, taken out for a traditional meal when we were in Japan, it's actually quite interesting because it actually kind of gives you that space to not be a filmmaker, that you don't have to be switched on, that you don't have to be that kind of like, oh, I've got to talk shop, that you actually are having a mutual shared experience that you can then relax and then have that icebreaker and then kind of carry on. Olena, what do you think about the reason why hospitality and networking are just so entwined?
Well, I think we're in the business of creating really memorable events, and there's kind of two sides to that coin, and we're creating really memorable events for the audience, of course, and that's part of event production, but we're also trying to create really memorable events for the filmmakers as well, because if they're having a good time and it's really obvious that they're having a great time, that kind of also rubs off on the audience as well that's interacting with them at Q&As. So you know, we want to create an experience, not just a great experience with the audience, but facilitate a great experience in the city that we're hosting them in, and of course the festival that we're hosting them in. HotDocs is a little bit unique in that we don't just run a festival, we also run a market. So for us, hospitality is also really important for business development, for documentary filmmakers who are trying to sell their films, and vice versa for buyers who are trying to create deals. So we also take hospitality very seriously as well. It's funny to talk about like taking hospitality seriously when it's like the most fun thing that you can do, but yes. Yeah.
when it works, it works.
When it works, it works. Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like a chore. It's interesting because my next question is, you know, for your individual festivals, why is the hospitality and networking important? Because you're all kind of different levels of festivals and in different parts of the world. And I think, you know, just going from our clients' experience of their time at HotDocs, what they really appreciated was that marketplace, that you could actually say, I am looking for XYZ, and that the hospitality team would go, well, that person is from that company and they're kind of they're looking for something that you might have. So that kind of matchmaking element was actually really important. And those particular clients were not traditional filmmakers. So for them, it really was really good to have somebody to kind of guide them, I would say, because they were from a theatre background. So, you know, when you're stepping into a film festival as a non-traditional filmmaker, it's overwhelming, but put someone in a market and it's suddenly like, I don't know what I'm doing here. So they really appreciated it. So why individually, for all the different festivals that you're repping, why is hospitality and networking important for your festival? And it could be like regional filmmakers, it could be international filmmakers, but why is it important for all of you?
I'll start. I think it's important for us because we feel like the filmmakers are are the VIPs. They are the big stars. We strive to celebrate them and treat them as if they were Laurence Olivier or whomever. It's important because they've put their blood, sweat, and tears into this project, you know, gone broke. And from what I hear, there's not too many other places that look at the filmmakers that way, you know, as being the point of celebration. So, and I think that's what sets us aside from a lot of other festivals because, yeah, we're here for the filmmakers.
That's good. Dan?
Yeah, I would say that the energy is very similar at Cucalorus. In fact, the filmmakers are the VIP and the filmmakers a lot of times are the audience as well. And so it is a very, like at Cucalorus, a little bit of a summer camp kind of vibe. And, you know, you're not coming to Cucalorus to sell your film to Sony Pictures Classics. You're not coming to walk the red carpet, right? Wilmington, North Carolina is a small city. There's a film studio here, a fairly large one because of Dino De Laurentiis, but it's still a small city. And so, you know, when filmmakers come to Cucalorus, to me, they're a little bit looking for that connection with their peers, a sense of validation by being in community with other people who are having the same struggles. And Cucalorus shows a lot of films by emerging filmmakers. So like learning how to network, learning how to navigate a film festival. Cucalorus is a little bit easier place, like, and they might graduate to go to like HotDocs or to a bigger festival. And at least they've had a little bit of experience at a film festival where there's not as much pressure. And we don't give out any awards. That's really important for us. We don't want the filmmakers to feel like they're competing with each other. And showing your film is nerve-wracking. You are handing your work over to somebody you don't really know. In some festivals, it might even be a volunteer who's running the equipment, you know? And so we try to create an atmosphere where everybody's as relaxed as possible. Our Filmmakers Lounge has a bar and it's open all day long. If that's your relaxation technique. And we're doing other things, I think, in recent years. You know, there's a meditation room or some yoga classes, other things that are a little more holistic than having a cocktail. But that's really, you know, our approach is to create a really relaxed space where people can take risks. There's a lot of performance art at Cucalorus, which, you know, we have an open mic where the filmmakers come and do all sorts of who knows what. And so we're really trying to almost like an incubator so that everything is easy, everything's walkable, no stress, as little stress as possible in a film festival environment, so that people can kind of open up and get to know each other. And that's all done through the hospitality. You know, whether it's the person picking you up at the airport, knowing what you look like, to having a filmmakers lounge that's open all the time. For us, it's really important that there's always a social space that is unstructured and that anybody can just pop in whenever they want to if they need to kind of connect. And that everything isn't a formal party that you have to wait in line. Because I know we've all been to festivals where every single thing you do, you had to RSVP, you get in a line. If your name's not spelled right, they're not going to let you through the door, that kind of thing. At Cucalorus, there's no guest list anywhere. Hopefully somebody's checking badges, you know, maybe every once in a while. But boy, if they didn't have to, wouldn't that'd be even better. And again, that's just our sort of like recipe. And it's so cool to go to other festivals where you do some of those things that are a little bit more formal. So, you know, I think that's one of the great things about the industry is that there's a flavor for everyone. And every festival takes it a little bit differently.
Yeah, definitely. I think the one thing that we get a lot from our clients is they kind of presume that they have to dress and act a certain way when they're at a festival and they're doing networking or they have to walk the red carpet. And we kind of have to say to them, unless a festival specifies that it is kind of black tie and fancy dress, wear what the hell you like, because it's your festival experience. And, you know, we've been on very flashy red carpets and seen people pretty much in pajamas. So, you know, it's whatever you feel comfortable in, but also, like, I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head, Dan, which every festival is very different. And I think that's like a mantra that we're forever trying to put into filmmakers' minds, is that, you know, there's a reason why there are top tier festivals, you know, because they have a certain type of audience. It's generally industry. It's not kind of your average audience goer. We look at audience-led festivals, we look to the audience. It's filmmakers that are screening, but also kind of people that live in the area. So you kind of have different levels of pressure put on you, I think, as a filmmaker when you're attending a festival. So anything to kind of, either if it is more formal, that there is that kind of hand-holding element to it, that you get somebody who's assigned to you to kind of talk you through and kind of set up your kind of speed dating, or, you know, your kind of one-on-one meetings. Or if it's, you know, less formal and really relaxed, that it's okay to kind of like check out for a few hours, or if it's, you know, in between screenings. Olena, how about HotDocs? Because I realize that's a little bit more of an industry kind of structure to it, especially with your role. Like, so why is the hospitality important for HotDocs?
I think for us, we really believe that if any, there's no such thing as like a documentary filmmaker. Like, if you have a great story and you want to tell it in the documentary form, you're a documentary filmmaker. And which means that we do get filmmakers from all different kinds of backgrounds. And we know that not everybody is, even if we are an A-list festival in the documentary space, that we know that filmmakers who come to our festival, this may actually be their first festival experience, or this may be something that they're really not used to. And so to be that conduit, I think we take that responsibility very seriously, which is funny to say, but we do. And for us, it's very important that the filmmaker kind of achieve the goals that they set out to when they come to a festival. And I say goals in a very light way, because some people are there in a more industry side to, you know, they have a very specific, I need to meet buyers who are doing acquisitions, or I need to find collaborators. But there's others kind of, you know, larger goals where it's like, I feel very alone in maybe my country of production. So I just want to meet other like-minded filmmakers, like Dan said, and we just want to really be there to help facilitate that experience. So yeah, it is a little different. I also want to I didn't get a chance to jump in, but I do want to say that, outside of work, I know I work for a documentary film festival, but I do produce fiction. And I produced a short film that played at Cucalorus, and I got invited, but I couldn't go because I had something that I couldn't leave for that weekend. But it's always stuck out in my mind, because Dan, the emails that your hospitality team sends to us, for me, was like completely unique. I've never experienced anything like it in my life. And I go to a lot of film festivals. I've been working for international film festivals for a decade. So for me, it was the fact that your festival stood out and that your team did so much effort to follow up and make really unique, you know, I felt like they were tailored emails. I didn't feel like they were copy paste. And I really appreciated that. It was like, oh, they really care. They like really want me to come. I was really sad I could not go.
Good. No, I completely concur. I mean, we had a very, this is going a few years back now, but we had a feature film screen at Cucalorus, and the filmmakers were just so enamored with that connection and the communication. And it was Nina Forever. So it's kind of going back a few years ago. So I do have a question, which is quite interesting and quite prominent right now from somebody. So it's, how can I best network when I'm not physically at a festival? So quite prescient now, but also kind of future and pre-pandemic, when people can't kind of travel as freely or as frequently as they would like to. So what would your advice be for any filmmaker that wants to really jump on board with the networking but can't physically attend?
I'll jump in on that, and thank you for Olena for saying that. What was the film?
It's called Jijo, which the spelling is D-Z-A-I-D-Z-I-O,
Yeah.
which is grandfather grandfather in Polish.
Well, I'm sorry you couldn't make it that time, but you'll have to come again. You know, if you can't go to a festival, to me, one easy step is to look at the other films in the festival and see whose story, you know, moves you, and reach out to them and say, hey, we're both screening it, you know, at Tallgrass. I'd love to see your film. At our festival last year, which we had 6 drive-ins and everything else was online, we did these conversations where the short filmmakers all got on a Zoom and we talked for an hour. And other people were invited, but it was mainly the filmmakers. And a couple of those actually, they set another one up on their own, like 2 months later, because, you know, as you might imagine, short films that are curated in a block together, the filmmakers had something in common, or there was something that connected them. And I think our dance filmmakers, especially, we have a dance film program at Cucalorus that we've been doing for about 15 years. And that group really connected. It was they knew some folks in common. But I wouldn't be shy about reaching out to the other filmmakers in the festival, and also to the staff at the festival. I think that for any filmmaker, getting into the festival is important, but more importantly, in the long term, is making connections to programmers and other people that are working at, because, you know, a lot of us work from one festival to another, you know, so you never know if, like, making friends at Cucalorus or Tallgrass or HotDocs might lead to your film playing in Berlin or at Toronto, because the staff person might move around. So making sure you're reaching out and taking an active role in developing those relationships. I have some amazing relationships that I've developed over email just before I ever met anybody. Now, a lot of those people would end up coming to Cucalorus or to Wilmington for some reason down the road. But it all started with a kind of fun, playful exchange over email about things that probably didn't really matter, you know.
That's great. Sorry, I have an intermittent ice cream van going up and down the street, so I'm having to mute myself occasionally. So how about Arietta? Have you got any kind of tips in terms of people that want to network when they're not not able to physically be present at a festival?
I think reaching out over social media is quite helpful also. I know we will create a week prior to the festival, we'll create a Facebook page just for the filmmakers that are attending, or their film is being screened and they're not able to attend. That way they can connect with each other and collaborate in any way that they would like. Yeah, email is another thing. Just not being afraid to reach out and saying, hey, I admire your work, or hello. It's all good.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think it doesn't cost anything either.
True.
You know, it's time, but then, you know, I think even when we're not in a pandemic landscape, I always feel that, you know, sign of a true invested filmmaker is when they watch the entire block of films. They don't just watch their own. And I think this is kind of, you know, you have more opportunity now because you're not having to rush off for a screening or a meeting. So I definitely do urge filmmakers still in a pandemic landscape, that's the easiest thing you can do, is actually just, you know, find the filmmakers that are in your block. And you might be part of the Q&A, but also what we have found is that if there are themes that are very similar in the films, more than often you will get programmed together again at another festival. So it's always nice to be able to kind of have that camaraderie from the beginning. Olena, do you want to chip in some thoughts as well on this?
Yeah, I mean, this is year 2 of HotDocs being online. We made a pivot very fast last year when we started to see the world shut down. So the question of networking, especially in a digital sphere, has been on our minds a lot. And we recognize two things. Number one, even if it is over Zoom, or even if it is over, I like to say ones and zeros, which is basically like a computer screen. It's super important, and it's still really important to have that connection. This is what we crave as not just humans, but also as filmmakers. Like, part of the reason that you make a film and submit it to a film festival is because you want it to go out into the world and to understand what that reception is. So if you're submitting to a film festival, it's because you do desire that to some degree. So we originally started last year with just online Zoom networking events. And then we did 2 twice a day for different time zones. So one in the morning for, I guess, more Western and European, and then in the afternoon for anyone who is kind of on the, East Coast, West Coast. Sorry, I'm really bad with directions, but you get my gist.
Yeah.
And this year what we learned from that is definitely people want to join, but also people are better at networking in breakout rooms or small groups. That's just kind of like the idea of being in an 800 person room. It's really overwhelming, and you don't know who to talk to unless you already know them. So breakout rooms was was definitely the goal this year. So this year, again, we did every day, twice a day, but we used this platform called OH, and then capital YAY. And it was a really cool platform that we were able to, first of all, customize, and we made it look like different spaces that you would recognize if you'd been to HotDocs before. So it was like, we had like the HotDocs cinema, and then we had the courtyard where we do our pitching, and so like the tent that we normally have our cocktail hour at. So people who had been to the festival before were like, oh, I know this space. And we limited the rooms to different sizes so that people could have that small intimate experience. And then it was also really important for us to implement this function where you can allow the participants for themselves to move in and out of rooms, exactly like if you were at a party and you're talking to a group of people and either the conversation is stale or maybe it's just not the conversation for you, whatever the reason, you decide that you want to leave. It's the same thing digitally. You have to give that autonomy to people, because that's the best way for individuals to network, is kind of at their own pace, at their own speed, and however tailored made for them. So that was something that we used. And we also did themed get-togethers this year a lot. So we did a celebration of Indigenous cinema. We did a celebration of LGBTQ cinema as well. So it was a combination of like highlighting filmmakers in the film festival and also just open to anyone who wanted to discover these works. And then I'm trying to think of what else we did. So much, but this is, anyways, I'm maybe like getting a little bit too much in the weeds. I don't know if this is helpful for filmmakers on the panel, but maybe I'll end. If you are a filmmaker and you're like, wow, that sounds great. These are questions that you can ask the film festival before you agree to screen at their festival. You can ask them like, what networking opportunities and what are you planning? Because if that's really valuable to you, they should already be thinking about it, even in a hybrid space, even in a digital space. I think that's a very fair question to ask, and it's important to understand. And there was a question earlier I saw in the Q&A about how to take care of introverts. And I think there's, if you are a filmmaker and you are an introvert and you know that about yourself, but you still want to meet people, one of the things that I definitely recommend is kind of like set a list of goals that you'd like to accomplish while you're going to a film festival, including who you want to meet. So if you are like, I'm working on a new project and I really need to meet a cinematographer, then approach the staff at the festival, the programmers, the hospitality managers, say, I'm really interested in meeting a cinematographer who's good with color. Do you have any recommendations? And it can be that specific, but sometimes that's really helpful to be that specific, even if you don't quite achieve what you want to achieve, because then it helps. I would say as a recovering programmer myself, there's like a list of names in my head of people. And, you know, if I like have to go through the filing system for something in mind, it's way easier than just like pulling out a random name of that filing system.
That's good. That's really good advice, because that was my next question I was going to come on to about, you know, how to deal with being overwhelmed, and also like if you're someone who is shy or just doesn't know how to interact with people. I think the term networking, Dan, you kind of nailed it earlier, that it just sounds so corporate and clunky. But I think the problem is the term networking always has this kind of stigma attached to it, that, you know, you have to get something from every conversation that you have. And networking shouldn't be that. Networking is literally having a conversation with someone that you end up talking about something, and it could be you just end up talking about the film that you've just seen. But it's not, it's still networking, because you're still saying, hi, who are you? What, you know, are you here with a film? Have you been to this festival before? But trying to steer away from always thinking that networking is about how many business cards can I get? How many meetings can I set up for the next day? Because it's such a non-familial way of engaging with people, that, you know, you're at a film festival, you're there for a reason. It's there to be kind of conversational and, you know, enjoy yourself, not always kind of feel that you have to achieve like certain kind of milestones. And I know that we kind of prep a lot of our clients when they go to a festival, and we know that they are kind of introverts, that we say to them, like, this is just like chatting with a drink in your hand. It's not kind of, you know, it's not enforced. If you don't feel comfortable, you're not kept there against your will. You can kind of wander off to another room, take a breather, and come back in and just cling to the corners if you want. But I think it's that idea of being an introvert and being a filmmaker go more hand in hand than people realize, I think. Arietta, have you got any tips for people that are introverts and that are not kind of good at chatting to strangers in a room?
I like the idea of making a list, making goals for yourself as far as, you know, meeting or getting whatever it is that you would like to receive. I also highly suggest that they find someone like me that may be out in the limelight all the time, but really is an introvert, and I'll be happy to sit in the corner with you and point out who it is. You should go talk to that person. I'm sure that there's always someone on staff that's willing to do that no matter where you go. So yeah, just don't be afraid. Number one, just get out there and do it.
Definitely, I agree. Dan?
Well, you know, I think the reason I first fell in love with film festivals was because I'm a little awkward, and I found it so much easier after seeing a film to talk to somebody. One of my best friends, an artist in New York named Bridget Green, I met after a screening at South by Southwest maybe 10 years ago, a film called Vivan las Antipodas. And it gives you something easy to talk about. And I do like the idea of writing down your goals and even some questions, right? I don't think that's a bad idea if you're an introvert. And for sure, if you are and you're going to a festival and you want to meet people, like Arietta, you said, somebody at that festival is outgoing. There used to be a guy at Cucalorus named Eddie Blakely, who, when he introduced you to somebody, you were like, wow, Eddie had a way of making you sound amazing and brilliant. And it was like every time you were near Eddie, he would introduce you to somebody and you felt confident in a way that maybe you didn't trying to introduce yourself. And he could say things about you that you really couldn't say yourself without being really awkward. And so finding somebody who's a little more outgoing to be your buddy, or even asking the festival for that, I think is absolutely brilliant. We are definitely going to suggest that. And Arietta, you said something earlier about, you make a private Facebook page for the filmmakers every year, is that right?
Yes, about a week before the festival starts. That way they can already start a conversation.
Yeah, they could go on for years. I think Wally Chung is here. There's a group of alumni filmmakers in New York who were meeting once a month for a while, Cucalorus in New York, you know, because they continued that conversation. And that part of their identity was the fact that they had met at Cucalorus. And so any way that you can expand the boundaries of the festival so that people carry that identity with them over time, I think is really valuable. And it can be just little things, you know. Yeah. You know, I think of myself as an introvert. I like to be by myself sometimes, and definitely have been in those cases where I was trying to talk to somebody who I really wanted to meet and sort of broke out into a sweat and said all sorts of weird things that didn't make any sense. And then maybe, what did you say, Manu? Cling to the corners? I love that term. I don't know if you just made that up, but I try to tell people that that's actually that at Cucalorus, everybody is awkward, right? I can remember going to festivals years ago where we go to a party and it was like the sponsors party, and you could tell that it was people from the town. They all knew each other. And there were some awkward people in the corner, and you could pretty much bet that those were the filmmakers. And so, you know, to me, Cucalorus wants to be the people who are clinging to the corners, right? As a group. And so saying that and celebrating that, I think maybe makes people a little more relaxed as well. Just admitting that we're all a little weird and that's why we're here together.
Yeah, I also think as well, there's something quite charming that I think when we're in a new situation, you can be the most outgoing person ever, but you still have to start from somewhere. You still have to kind of like, you know, have that grounding. That I think everyone slightly is an introvert until they hit on the topic that it doesn't matter who they're talking to. They just kind of go guns blazing and they just discuss it. So, you know, I deal with festival strategy every single day and eat, sleep, breathe it. So, you know, whenever somebody says to me, what do you think of this festival? Or what do you think about this? And I'm like, bam, I am there and I'm just gabbling away. But I think it's the psychology of networking. It is kind of based in a business corporate kind of deals and, you know, that kind of just awkwardness. And a lot of filmmakers are not at that stage of kind of understanding the exchange that they can have, or that kind of that business-esque kind of conversation. And I think, you know, when you approach networking as more kind of conversational and it's just kind of chatter about film and your experiences, because I think if we all kind of really think about it, when we are standing in a room and we meet someone at a festival, the first thing we kind of say is kind of like, oh, hi, are you a filmmaker? Are you, you know, are you an audience member? Are you from the area? Do you work for the festival? It's never like, you know, what's your acquisition deal on a 3 years over a film? You know, it's not that kind of intricate. But Olena, you look like you wanted to say something a bit earlier.
I do. My other recommendation, if you're an introvert and you don't know, you're invited to a film festival, you don't know how you're going to network, maybe you've got some goals, but another great thing to do is to write down a few, you know, it doesn't have to be many, it can be 2 or 3, but just like topics of conversation in your back pocket, just so that you're not caught unprepared. Of course, an easy one to talk about is the film that you saw at the festival. That's an easy one, but I like to recommend, even if it's something interesting that's going on in the industry that you'd like to talk about, like the one that I'm really obsessed with lately is Amazon Prime's acquisition of, of that catalog and how they paid $9 billion for it. Anyways, I'm like, so it just, if you have something that is, you know, beyond just kind of who you are, what your film is, and then it kind of helps you be prepared a little bit more for conversation as well. And that's always a useful thing if you're an introvert. If you're uncomfortable talking about yourself, some people are not comfortable talking about themselves, then you can talk about other things. And maybe you make a connection with someone who's also obsessed with the same story as you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I have a question that's been sent in by Kent. And I'm afraid I'm not sure how I can send an ice cream truck through the powers of the internet. But when I do, it's coming your way. They have said, I would love to hear what you expect from the filmmakers coming to the festival, as well as what makes them stand out to you. And I thought that's a really interesting question, considering that you're all in different areas of this kind of hospitality and networking umbrella. So Arietta, what would you say, you know, what would you expect from the filmmakers coming to the festival and what makes them stand out?
That's kind of hard. It's like, I'm not sure. I expect for them to be on time. I have my own agenda. No, I would expect for them to make sure that they asked questions, all the questions and make sure that they get answered, both before they arrive and after they leave. It's really helpful when filmmakers are very organized and are prompt to respond to emails where we're asking for this, that, and their left sock. It's really nice if they can be prompt in responding. I know it's being on location doesn't always allow that, but it's very helpful. And just great attitude, be happy. That's my main thing. I expect for them to be happy, because if they're not, I'm going to find out why and make sure that they are happy.
I feel like we need an Arietta in every corner of every room. That's what I'm kind of getting so far. Olena, what do you expect from a filmmaker once they've been selected, and what makes them stand out in terms of good elements?
I definitely have an answer, but I saw Dan give a little money gesture, and I wanted to talk about that first.
Was that a jazz click?
I was just snapping like
It's a jazz click. I thought it was like they're gonna ask about screening fees. I thought that's what that gesture was.
I was feeling the love from Arietta.
I love Arietta's comment about being on time. I know it's sometimes hard with jet lag, back when that was a thing, but it really does make a difference to both your experience and of course the staff's experience. The staff, because if you're on time, they can help you better. They have more difficult time to react and to problem solve if there's less time involved. So definitely on time is a good one. I love the positive attitude. I know especially A-list festivals are incredibly stressful. You have all these goals that you would need to meet, but people really connect with you more when they feel like they're talking to someone more relaxed. And so there's a mantra that we have, which is smile, you're at a festival. And I kind of like that mantra a lot, which is, it's going to be okay. It's just a screening, have fun. But also, I think my favorite filmmakers are always the ones that are curious. You don't have to be super social, but I love filmmakers who are, curious about the city that they're in. They're curious about films. They're curious about, why this, because it makes for great conversation, but also it just means that it just kind of like shows a level of engagement, and it kind of is like a signal to the festival about what kind of engagement you're looking for as well. So ask a lot of questions.
Definitely. And Dan, was that rain we heard earlier? Or is it gone?
Yeah, we had a little rain. It went past. Well, this is maybe the most important question, I think. Like what do we expect of filmmakers, but also what do filmmakers expect of the festival? And just like any relationship, if you don't say those things out loud, things are going to get difficult, right? And so, I think we expect filmmakers to, communication is key, right? Like make sure we have your email address, the one that you check most often, right? Don't make up an email address for your film that someone checks once every 2 weeks. It's so weird to like watch 2,000 films, to pick the ones that are in the festival, and then the filmmaker never responds. Yeah. And you don't know whether they're getting the emails or not, so just that basic, and even if you don't have the like materials that we're asking for, email us back and say that you don't have them right now. That at least then we can move forward. But I think it's also important for filmmakers to let festivals know what their expectations are. And that's as simple as like how you're going to bring a dozen people in a limo 10 minutes after the screening starts and you expect them all to sit on the third row. You know what I mean? Like, whoa, okay, that's good to know ahead of time. But also what they want to get out of the festival, you know? And so, wow, I love what you just said about people being curious. There's nothing more flattering than somebody being curious. So noticing some of the details of the festival. And I think it was at maybe in Toronto a few years ago, they had basically a little statement about saying about you're at a festival, smile, be nice to the volunteers. If you've made a film and you're at a festival and it's going really badly, it's probably not the volunteers' fault. It's probably my fault, right? And I would also say definitely go and meet the festival staff. Just like make a checklist and come up and say hello, and then maybe even a second time. I know for us, I'm meeting several hundred people for the first time in a couple of days. And so, you know, making sure that you've made an impression. One of the things that I do that helps me when I'm feeling really introverted is I wear a piece of clothing that's remarkable so that I have something to talk about, you know, and that there's like a little bit of a story behind it that I know I can tell to like make things less awkward. And so I do think standing out a little bit, you know, whatever that means for you, whether it's like telling a story about your mom or, you know, everybody has a story that reveals a little bit of something about themselves. I think it's really nice to share that with each other, with this festival staff. You know, at that moment when everything feels like on edge, like the screening's about to start or something like that, that just sort of puts us all like on the same level, to me feels really important for all sides of the bargain, right? But I do wish, I even think that's like, as we're talking about this, that we should send a list to filmmakers, like this is what we expect. Be on time. You know, at Cucalorus, that means 20 minutes, there's a 20-minute window. After the time you thought is like, that's our, for years, all of our screenings started 20 minutes late until we started using a professional theater. They were like, no, we're gonna start the movie right when you said we would. Yeah, be on time and ask questions. I think one of my favorite festivals is the Borscht Film Festival, and they made a schedule, but nobody actually followed the schedule. So you had to ask somebody where to go next. And I think that's always a great question at a festival. Like, hey, what are you doing next? What movie do you recommend? Or where is the party that's not on the schedule? Those are really important for filmmakers to do that, to know, to ask. And eventually, after you've been at the festival for a little while, you'll figure out who the person is you need to ask. It's like, oh yeah, I need to ask Arietta every day, like where the happy corner is, because that's where I'm gonna go and hang out. And ask more than one person. Like you might, somebody else might tell you the wrong corner.
I think the sign of when you're fully installed at a festival, because I kind of always explain that festivals are a very kind of weird time warp, because we suddenly kind of revert to sitting in a dark room with strangers, and that's the thing that we do all day and every day, and that's our role. So you kind of lose track of time and days and real life happening outside of that. I think the true sign when you've been at a festival that you've had a really good experience at is when you are the one asking the questions to begin with, but then as the days progress, you're the one giving the answers to other people that need to know the answers as well. So I think pretty much everything that all three of you have said, I think is perfectly valid. And I think just backtracking slightly is, and this is from a festival strategist perspective, is when you are submitting to a film festival, you need to know that you're happy, first of all, spending the money on that festival, but that you are happy to be selected there. Because so many times we have filmmakers that kind of scattergun approach submissions and then suddenly get selection and then go, I don't want to be screened there anymore. And it's because they're trying to kind of not rig the system, but they're trying to kind of do this very broad approach to see what comes back. And it's so disheartening for a festival that's had to sift through all those submissions to then kind of go, we've picked this film out of all the other ones. And then that filmmaker's saying no. So I would say, like, even from the beginning, I think a lot of film festivals now, because of the COVID landscape that we have been through and are still in some parts, that festivals are being very transparent and upfront about what they can offer. and how they're going to deliver their festival. And I'm hoping that that is something that continues once we kind of go back to some kind of normalcy, because I think that level of transparency between what festivals can offer and what a filmmaker should be expecting is something that should be literally pretty much like this, not kind of like being promised the world and then delivering nothing, which of course there are festivals that do that, but not very good ones.
Katie, something we haven't mentioned about this is that I think most of us expect the filmmakers to participate a little bit in publicity.
Yeah.
And the filmmakers who really go over the top are the ones that like have the amazing experience, the ones who like wear costumes and pass out flyers. Like if you go to a fringe festival, right, a theater festival, those performers are like, they are on the streets, probably even sometimes getting in trouble because they're so aggressive at getting their flyers out. It's awesome when filmmakers do that. And maybe you're not the person who puts on a chicken costume, but like reaching out to local media, you know, making yourself like part of that energy is really important.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we've got another question here, which I feel like we've slightly touched on, but in terms of maybe first-time filmmaker. So this is Brian. So he's ramping up for his first short film festival run, and he hasn't networked much. So what should he know going in? If my hope is that this will be a step towards making a feature someday. So possibly a proof of concept, which might be a slightly different approach to networking, because of course you've got something that proves your story can stand alone and tell a bigger story. So what would your advice be from someone who is taking a slightly different angle in terms of proof of concept, but also hasn't really networked that much? Who wants to go first? Olena?
Yeah, because I work for a market, so I give advice on how to sell your film a lot. If that's okay. A lot of people start from scratch, and the fact that you have previous work in your pocket, the previous work that has played other film festivals, already makes you a great asset. So my number one advice is to if you are going out into market with your feature film, to have that link ready in your back pocket, because it's like even printed on a business card, so that people can be like, oh, and you can watch my previous film. So you definitely want to leverage that. But my second advice is, if you don't know how to start networking, but you want to start, working on your feature film, is to watch a lot of films at home, decide, like contemporary films, decide what kind of styles and tones are similar to yours or similar that you want to achieve with your feature film, and then go out and find those people who worked on that film. Go out and find that producer, go out and find that cinematographer. And especially if it's, an indie film, we've all said it here, but people are a lot more generous of spirit than we give them credit to. And if they're not, then, they're not worth your time anyways. So you'll be surprised about finding their websites and people getting back to you. And that's kind of the best way to start, is do that little bit of research at home first before going out. Because otherwise you're just kind of, throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. And this is kind of a way to help you be a bit more targeted in your networking. And I don't want to say that as a very corporate way, but networking in terms of even just, again, meeting people who could introduce you to other people, and maybe you're finding your future collaborator. Maybe you're finding your future romantic partner. Maybe you're who knows who you're going to meet. And I think that's also the beauty of film festivals, is you just don't know what's going to happen and come out of it. And I find that fun. And that's why I've been working for them for 10 years.
That's a glowing testament if ever I've had one. Arietta or Dan, how about you? Kind of advice for someone who hasn't networked much but has a short film that's hoping to be kind of built into a feature.
I would just say, do your best to contact someone who has done exactly that, taken their short and developed it into a feature. That's probably the best advice you're going to be able to find, is, through the trial and error of someone else.
Definitely. And also, I think it's now quite common for people to kind of chart their success of a proof of concept short to a feature. because it is a lot more kind of an indie approach. I think, you know, we've gone past the days when proof of concepts were made to sweet talk studios into giving you money. I think now people are making a proof of concept short, proving it works, and then kind of going to source the money themselves and making a feature. Dan, how about you?
You know, I think Olena, you gave great advice with like find a film that's been made. I'd want to find the art department folks and the wardrobe folks. They're like the most fun people. You know, the people who spent their day looking for that lamp, that weird lamp that had to be a certain way. I know some of my best friends are like art department folks. And man, that's great advice. I've never thought of that. What a brilliant way to navigate a festival is like figure out a film that's kind of like what you want to make, and then go find some of those people. And even if you're not going to work with them, they will be like, oh, I have a buddy in Wichita who's a art director, or I have a friend in Toronto who's a wardrobe person. Yeah, great strategy. And another, just I'll reiterate that same point about having your card with a link on it. Festivals could be so busy. I mean, I can't tell you how many festivals I've been to, and you look at your watch, it's the end of the day and you haven't seen a movie yet, because they tend to be over programmed and there's so much going on that it's hard to sit down. And so at least give somebody a chance to see your film later. And as I was thinking about this panel and thinking about what networking, your network are people that you know. And so you really just want to get to know some people. And that to me, that sounds a lot less intimidating than the word networking. Yes. I can get to know some people, and I can find the spaces where, there are people who are kind of like me, even at a big event, and get to know some people, just, normal conversation. There's no need to like your conversation all of a sudden to be totally different. What do you like to talk about normally? When you're at the coffee shop and you run into somebody you've never met, what do you talk about? Like a book you read or whatever. It doesn't have to be different. In fact, I find that especially people who are just like a little bit famous really don't want that, right? They don't want those awkward questions that they've gotten a million times that there isn't really an answer to. They'd much rather talk about, this book that your aunt gave you that you just read about cats, and so to me, that makes it feel a lot easier. Like, oh, I'm just going to get to know some people at this festival, which just seems like a lot less pressure.
Definitely. I think my Facebook is pretty much kind of festival folks or filmmakers I've met at festivals. And it's just, there's something quite endearing about continuing that relationship, and seeing their journey kind of progress, because I think anyone, like no matter what role they're playing in an industry like film, always wants to kind of see someone do well. Like, especially when they've met them at a film festival, maybe they've met them with their first film and then they next see them when they've got a feature, and you just kind of go, there's a progression there. And it's really nice to be able to kind of say, oh, do you remember that time? Like, how do we meet? Oh, we met at the green room at that festival when we were both playing our short films, and now look at us. And it's almost like time stamping, not necessarily age, but progress and career development. And I think, I don't like to kind of focus on age, because we champion filmmakers of all ages and all experiences, and we've got some filmmakers making their first film at 70, so it doesn't negate kind of strength of quality or anything else, but just that idea of kind of saying, I met you at this point in time, and you'll always remember that festival and you'll always remember that experience. Again, every time I do one of these, it just makes me really long for film festivals again.
Melanie has a really good point. Like, don't just talk about your film the whole time.
Yeah.
It's really hard if you're just totally like pushing that one thing, that can be really off-putting. And, it's so much better to let it come up organically in conversation.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
You don't always have to tell your concept of your film. If someone likes you, they're going to want to find out about your film.
Have those other topics of conversation in your back pocket so that you're not like, I don't know what else to talk about except my film.
Yeah, definitely. Mine's easy because I have green hair, so people don't really forget me. And I also wear a lot of bold colors. So yeah, I'm not an introvert, let's just say that. So we're rapidly running out of time. I can't believe it's already been like an hour already. So we've got 15 minutes left, but I do have one question, which I think will be really interesting to hear from all of your different perspectives. And it's from a filmmaker. And they wanted to know, what do you think is a good measure of success in these areas? Is it feedback? Is it statistics? Or is it anything else? Like what would you say is a good sign that, you've had a fruitful networking opportunity, or, you've experienced good hospitality?
I would say if you walk away with a smile on your face and a new friend, I think that's a pretty good measure of success for your networking adventure.
Couldn't agree more.
I think success is how you define it. If you're only going to a film festival because it's a chance to travel and you want like the coolest experience and you walked away with that, then that's a success. If you walked away with 10 Facebook friends and because you wanted to meet more collaborators, then that's a success. So there's no rules. Define your own success. Figure it out. And sometimes figuring it out, it does take like going to a few film festivals in order to kind of understand that. So if it takes a little bit of time, don't stress, and go at your own pace.
Absolutely. I like the idea of no rules, because we're kind of governed by rules everywhere else. So
except be on time. That's a
rule.
I'd also say, like, it's totally cool if you go to a film festival and you don't actually talk to anyone. That is so fine, right? I can't tell you how many times I've been to a big festival and the person I wanted to meet was surrounded by, people that were taller than me. And so I just wandered off. But then emailed them, 2 weeks later and said, hey, I was at the screening. There's something really important about being present, right? And being present doesn't always mean talking. We have this tendency in Western culture to fill every space, right? It's like, well, that doesn't have to, it's fine to leave some space there. But being present and like having that as a reference point can be a great way to start a conversation later when people aren't busy and there are, the added kind of pressures of being at a film festival. So I think you can definitely have a successful festival and have successful networking by just being present and then following up later and discovering some film that you really liked. And then the other end of the spectrum, you could just be totally over the top and have your plan written out, the 47 people that you're going to meet, and you're going to tick them off the list and go home really tired. So I think, there's just a wide spectrum of how you can measure that success, I think.
Definitely. I mean, echoing back to what you said earlier, it's so common for myself and other team members from Festival Formula to go to a film festival and not watch any films because we're busy meeting the filmmakers or we're talking to the festival team. And, the amount of conversations we've had just like when we're on the way to a screening, that it turns into such an important conversation that we go, we'll give those seats up for audience members. We'll kind of talk to this filmmaker. And I think those chance encounters, they're so I think the thing that I love about film festivals is that it's so defined by its time and its location and that kind of chance encounter of all of these filmmakers in the same place being curated at an event by the film festival in question. And if they are a festival that international guests arrive, like that filmmaker has decided to make the conscious effort to attend that festival. And I think that's the beauty of film festivals, is you don't know who you're going to meet. You might not like everyone that you meet, and that's fine, like absolutely fine. I will say, like, the stress of a film festival can really change somebody's demeanor, just because if it's their first time screening, we've had clients where it was the first time traveling outside of their country and their first ever screening and first time seeing it in front of an audience they didn't know. and they were on edge, understandably. But then also, yeah, just kind of, I think back to some of the filmmakers that I really respect and engage with on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram now. Sometimes when I first met them, they were quite abrasive because they'd just come out of a screening and their film perhaps didn't screen as best as they like, or, you know, they overheard somebody saying something about the film. And I think the beauty of film festivals is that they're so vastly different, and they're like different from the films they screen, different to the audience that they're entertaining, different to the experiences they have. Which leads me on to a penultimate question. Which is, what's the best experience of hospitality and networking that you've all experienced, which is not the festival that you represent?
Well, Dan and Arietta are thinking about that question. I'm just going to jump in with one more comment, which is when I was starting out my career and I was working for film festivals, and I didn't know how to navigate it, and I was also so overwhelmed with like, oh my God, there's so many parties and there's so many things, there's so many places I could go and I don't know who to meet. And I had a colleague, a senior colleague, who looked at me and she's like, the best thing that you can do is go see films. And I was like, what? And she's like, if you want, you know, that's the best place to go, because this is why we're here. We make films, we love the art. Go see as many films as you possibly can, and you are going to learn so much. And I always take that advice like wherever I go, and it's opened so many doors. I've learned so much about different audiences that way, just by sitting in a theater. So for example, I go very often to the Marrakesh Film Festival, and the first time I went to see a screening there, it was like an audience I've never experienced before in my life. They don't have Q&As. They literally have debates where people like stand up and talk to each other and in the like audience members and debate it. And they're like debating, they're like pushing the director, like debating something that was in the film. And you learn so much about cinema, about people, about the place that you're in just by going to a film screening. So please don't forget that, and let's cherish it, because I really miss it. It's been over a year and I really want to go back to the cinema.
I completely agree with that. So does anyone want to share their favorite or one of their best memories of hospitality and networking from a festival that wasn't their own?
I'll jump in. I've mentioned them just a minute ago, the Borscht Film Festival in Miami, which may or may not ever happen again. It's hard to say, but exquisite curation of humans. They put us up in a like boutique hostel that was right on the beach. People went out on the beach all night long and hung out on blankets. Everything started 2 hours late. It was so confusing, but the right people are together, you know. And so if you get the right people together, that to me, that's one of the most thoughtful things you can do as an organizer, is really think about who are the people that you're putting together in a room, and you know, a little bit about what the room looks like and what's in that room, right? Whether you put pizza or cheese grits or whatever. But that, to me, that's so essential. And I think sometimes we overlook that because I think we're looking at the film so often. But to me, the people are just as interesting as the films. And so I had an incredible experience at Borscht, and aspire to having that level of like human curation attached to what we do. Maybe not starting things 2 hours late, but the great comfort of it was, the reason that wasn't stressful, that sounds really stressful, doesn't it? The reason it wasn't stressful is that there were 35 of us, and you looked around and it was like, oh, well, there's Katie, there's Olena, there's Arietta. Like, I'm not worried about being late for this thing, because this is actually why I'm here, is to be with these people. So if we're, you know, whatever, we are the event. And so, yeah, that's a special memory for me.
Oh, wow.
And so many festivals do it well. I would have to say, you know, Sidewalk Film Festival in Birmingham does a great job. Maryland Film Festival. I mean, I've been going to 8 or 9 festivals a year for almost 20 years. I'm in love with so many different festivals. So I can't mention just one. The one in Miami is just the weirdest one, I guess. So many people do a great job of taking care of the people that are part of their festival experience.
Amazing. Arietta or Olena, do you want to share?
Well, pardon me, I'm ashamed to say that I have not had the pleasure of visiting a lot of other festivals, because when I'm not working with Tallgrass, I'm usually on stage or working on a film. So hopefully one of my projects is going to be picked up and go on the festival circuit, and I get to enjoy lots of other places.
Oh, well, that's a good excuse and a good remedy as well. That's good. That's good. We'll let you off. Olena, how about you?
The film festivals, the best hospitality experiences that I had are film festivals who don't want to do it like other film festivals. They know what their value is. They know what unique thing that they have, and they really encourage you and embrace you to experience that. So one of my favorite film festivals is Available Light Film Festival in the Yukon, and it's in the Yukon. Like how often does one get to travel that far north of 60? So one of the things they do is they always encourage you to check out that as much as you can. So they organize trips to the hot springs, so it's easy for you to access that. They organize dog sledding trips as well. So it's just like, we know that this is what we have unique to value to you. So, and they did it for both industry and for filmmakers. And one of the things that I really loved about it, but apparently it wasn't a film festival thing, apparently that's just a Yukonian thing, is everywhere you went, there was food. Like everywhere. If you went to, they would host like an open mic night that wasn't really part of the festival, but you went there and there was like a slow cooker of beans and a taco dish. And I once asked someone, I was like, why is there food everywhere? Why? Like, I've never seen that before. And they explained to me that it's so cold in the Yukon in January that if you made the effort to put on your snow boots and like put everything on and go out, that you deserve like something warm and delicious on the other end. And I loved that, and it's always stayed with me. And so that's like the greatest hospitality experience.
Oh wow, that sounds amazing. I mean, if I think about all the places that we've been to as an industry guest and what they've put on, like, yeah, I don't think I've ever had anything as random as that, but that sounds amazing. I mean, I remember being taken to a local temple in China, and because my partner who works with me in the company, Ian, he has a massive beard, which is very rare in Chinese culture, and obviously plus size lady here with half shaved head and green hair and tattoos. So we would just constantly stop the whole time and ask to take pictures of, and like people sending their little children up to us to kind of like tug on our sleeves and just wave, which was quite peculiar. Actually, Wally has asked what that festival was. So Olena, do you mind typing it? Oh, there we go. Perfect. You beat me to it. Fantastic. We are drastically running out of time, so I'm just going to do a very speedy kind of final question before kind of wrapping up. So what do you want to see festivals, what do you want to see more festivals doing in the future when it comes to hospitality and networking? So I'm going to speedily come to you, Olena.
This doesn't quite touch on hospitality and networking, but it definitely touches on as filmmakers, what you can be asking for film festivals, and maybe this is controversial for me to say, but I'm going to say it anyways, is screening fees, because I know it's a huge question in the industry, especially now that film festivals are online or hybrid, and there's less opportunities to be hosted or to network. And so what is the value add that film festival is giving you? And for all the film festivals out there, I know it's very difficult. You're an arts organization. It's really hard times, but if you can even offer just a little bit of a screening fee, it really does help with career sustainability, which is which is very important because we want these filmmakers to come back. You know, you picked them because that they're talented, that they had something to say, and we want them to come back. So if you can, really do consider it. And if you're a board member, consider also putting in the budget.
Controversial, but important. Absolutely. Arietta, what do you wish more festivals would be doing in the future when it comes to these areas?
I would just like to see everyone be as mindful as all of us are, as far as hospitality goes, and how all of the filmmakers are treated, because I've heard horror stories and it's like, okay, but I really would like to see everyone across the board have really solid hospitality and networking opportunities in the future.
Fantastic. Yeah. I hear that. Dan, do you want to find a word on that kind of question?
Well, I first, again, just want to sort of support what Olena said about paying fees. I mean, and I would suggest that is the ultimate hospitality, right? I mean, cheese grits and free beer, don't pay for your dental work, don't pay your rent. And so it's just impossible to have a sustainable, healthy industry without filmmakers being brought into the financial equation in a more meaningful way. And I think one step from that is also transparency. And I think that's a key hospitality issue. I don't think it's knowing how much money film festivals are making from entry fees, how many films that get in have actually paid fees, how much money the festival's making. The transparency goes both ways. And I think that if we really want to take care of filmmakers, which that's what hospitality is taking care of each other. If we really want to take care of filmmakers, we've got to bring them into the financial equation in a really open and transparent way. Festivals can no longer expect to just get their raw material for free. If I build houses, I can't get lumber for free. They laugh you off the lumber yard, wouldn't they? And I think we've got to create that culture in the film festival industry where the long-term health and sustainability of filmmakers is really at the top of our, everyday's kind of mission. So this has been an awesome conversation. I'm so happy that I got to be a part of this.
Yeah, I could carry on talking even later into the UK night. Unfortunately, I feel like I have to let you go. But all that is left for me to say is a massive, massive thank you to our guests, Olena, Dan, and Arietta. It's been my pleasure having you as guests to share your perspectives. And I want to thank you for your time as well, because I realized that, time is precious, as we've spoken about. And I'm really thankful for all of your insights as well. And I'm sure those watching feel the same. There's been some very nice comments in the chatter, in the Q&A, in the chat section. But thank you so much. It's been absolutely wonderful having you all on. Our final session in this kind of series takes place July 1st. And it focuses on now what the different routes filmmakers can take after their circuit journey has finished, and we'll be joined by representatives from Pause TV, Short of the Week, and Film Republic. So keep an eye out on our socials for the sign up for that, and hopefully you can all join us. But until then, again, thank you so much to all of our special guests tonight, and please stay safe and keep creative. And again, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you so much, Katie.
My pleasure. Take care, everyone. Bye.